One of the most popular questions I get asked is, when should I go from DIY to professional soundproofing? Because there's a lot of things that I would suggest you do DIY because you'll save a lot of money. Soundproofing, you want to block some noise, and how to do that: seal all the cracks. That is something that you can do DIY. If you're soundproofing the door, the wall, or the window, all these cracks, all these gaps are letting light in at some instances. And also, if you see light or if you feel cold air coming through, let's say your window, then noise will easily be coming through. So sealing all those cracks, all those gaps is the first thing that you should do. Buy something like acoustic sealant, or you can even buy silicone sealant. Just make sure that it's something that doesn't crack over time, that stays rubbery. Acoustic sealant is something like that. Acoustic sealant can cost a little bit more money. I'll have links in the description below of everything I talk about in this video to make it easier, and I'll also have a cheaper alternative below. A lot of these products that have the name soundproofing or acoustic in the name, these are words that just makes it more specialized and raises the price. So sometimes you can just buy something that's not as specialized and it can work just as good, and you'll have that in the description below. And also, if you want to spend a little bit more to hire some professional help for something a little bit more complicated, or if you have a question that you really want to ask, sometimes I don't see all the questions, I have a membership that you can join down below. Go check that out and pick the one that's right for you. Next thing that you can do pretty well DIY, let's move to the door, is change the hollow core door to a solid core door. Even if you're renting, you can do this and just store the hollow door somewhere and bring the solid door with you when you leave. Because if the person on the other side of that door is just driving you crazy, that hollow door, most interior doors are hollow. It's just filled with some type of cardboard, honeycomb material, and it makes it so the door doesn't collapse on itself, but it doesn't really stop any noise. A solid core door, you can buy one that looks exactly like the door that you have in your house, costs about double, and it's solid. And of course, the more mass you have, the more sound waves will be blocked. So just by doing this, it will make a huge difference to the door, but you'll have to spend a little bit more. One thing to note, however, is you might have to change the hardware on the door, because the door is going to be a lot more heavy than the door that you just removed. You don't want the door to sag or collapse. But if you don't really want to go ahead and spend maybe $100-200 to swap the door from a hollow to a solid core door, and you just have about 20 bucks in your pocket, then sealing the gaps around the door is going to block a lot of noise. If you have that half-inch gap underneath the door, that's letting a lot of noise in. However, for ventilation purposes, the reason why I choose the U-shaped door sweep is because it's easily removable. You install it, you remove it when you're done, and the room doesn't get as stuffy. Another thing is weather strip around the door. Now that can stay. And the type of weather strip that you buy is thin. Just make sure it's clean around the door frame, the inner frame, and add the weather strip right there. And that will make a big difference, especially if you grab on to the doorknob and the door is quite wobbly. That means that there's quite a gap. And it will make your door close a lot more tightly and leave the noise on the outside of the room. And if you live in a rental, it's perfect because you can just bring it with you, throw the weather strip in the garbage, and they'll never know you were there. Another thing that you can do quite easily DIY, well, not quite easily, this can go both ways, because installing another layer of drywall can sound daunting to a lot of people, which I understand. Myself, I am not a professional drywall installer. I can do it, but this could be done professionally. Most interior walls in homes, in apartments, are half-inch. A lot of noise gets through a half-inch piece of drywall. But the ones that I would suggest to put over that half-inch drywall would be 5/8 of an inch drywall. It's thicker, doesn't cost that much more, and it will block a lot more noise than just your typical half-inch drywall. If you do it yourself, don't forget to buy the outlet extenders, because if you put your faceplate back on the outlet, you'll find out that the prongs don't really reach. So that's one thing to note. You'll have to bring the outlets a little bit out and extend them. And don't forget to seal around that wall with acoustic sealant, because adding that mass but having that gap all around the wall, it could undermine your entire soundproofing project. Another thing that you can do DIY is, if the wall is unfinished, adding some insulation. Now, insulation is not really a soundproofing product, even though that they sell some that says safe and sound because it blocks noise. It doesn't block noise. What it does, it makes that internal cavity, if sound waves do go through the wall, instead of bouncing and echoing inside the wall, it will deaden that noise. But going from expensive insulation or the cheaper pink fiberglass insulation, I would just go with the pink fiberglass insulation if your budget is quite limited. It will do the job. It will deaden the noise coming through the wall, but don't expect it to block that noise. It's an added bonus. But if you do want to spend extra, go with something like mineral wool. It is denser, it is thicker, it will work a little bit better, but not by a huge spectrum that some people might suggest. Now, these last things can be done DIY or hiring a professional. One thing, however, that you should hire a professional is installing something like a resilient channel or sound clips. What that does is usually every footsteps, they go down through the floor, through the studs, through the ceilings, and you can hear everything, and it's quite annoying. And this is not something that you can really do in a rental, unfortunately, but in your home, if you're building and people on the upstairs will bother you, then a resilient channel will make a big difference. But if you make a mistake and that screw goes a little bit too far and goes through the resilient channel and keeps going right into the stud, you've basically connected the ceiling again onto the stud, so now the resilient channel will not work. You wouldn't recommend it to your friends, obviously. I would suggest hiring a professional, but make sure to ask them if they've ever installed it, because if they haven't, what's the difference between them and you? They'll probably screw up just as easily as you or I. Another thing that I would hire somebody to do is, if you want to soundproof the window, let's just say that sealing the cracks around the window didn't really offer you that much soundproofing, I would suggest swapping your window. If it's a single pane window, thin window, a lot of noise is going through. Swap that with a double or triple pane window. There's usually an inert gas in between these panes, and these gaps acts like a sound blocker. Where you can go a little bit further is by an acoustic glass, which they still have a double or triple pane. However, they have a special film inside the glass that is clear that will block a little bit more noise than just the inert gas. Hopefully this video gave you a little bit of insight as to where you should start, basically filling in the gaps and just doing things like weather strip, door sweeps, maybe going as far as drywall, but it depends on your comfort level if you want to go that far, and when to hire a professional. If you want to learn more about soundproofing and you're on a budget, you want to do it, let's say $100 or less, video right there can show you exactly how to do it. And thanks again for watching. Until next time, assuming you subscribed.